My name is Lorene Calloway. I am 60 years old. The evening started like any other Sunday dinner at my daughter's house, same candles, same carefully plated roast, same practiced politeness. Marissa had always liked control. Even in her dining room, her husband, Ethan, kept his eyes on his phone between bites, and her mother-in-law, Vivian Langford, sat across from me, wrapped in quiet authority. I poured iced tea instead of wine. Vivian never drank, and I'd learned not to draw her attention. The conversation drifted toward work, then houses, then success. It was all safe until Marissa laughed a small, sharp sound that didn't belong in family talk. "Mom," she said lightly, "you know, Vivian built everything herself. No help, no handouts. She earned what she has. Unlike you." The words hung in the air like smoke from a candle just snuffed out. Even Ethan's screen went dark. I looked at her, at my only child who once called me every night after college, who cried the day I paid her first month's rent. She didn't meet my eyes. Vivian adjusted her napkin, pretending not to hear, but I caught the corner of her smile. I folded mine neatly, feeling my heartbeat slow. "Then I'll stop paying your bills," I said quietly. "Let her help you now." Marissa blinked, her fork still in midair. What bills I stood, collecting my purse from the chair beside me. "You'll find out soon enough." Behind me, a chair scraped against the hardwood. No one spoke. Even the air seemed unsure of what to do next. As I stepped outside, the night air hit cool and clean against my skin. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, like I'd finally stopped holding my breath. Tomorrow, I would start deciding what silence was worth keeping. When I got home that night, I didn't turn on the lights. The house knew how to be quiet with me. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd signed so many checks over the years, and let the memories unroll like old paper. Marissa had been 26 when she married Ethan. She wanted a garden wedding, white tents, string lights, and a live band by the river. "It's only once in a lifetime." "Mom," she'd said, smiling, and I'd nodded. The total came to nearly $60,000. I didn't tell her I'd taken a loan against my retirement fund. When their first house fell through during inspection, I offered the down payment $120,000 because I couldn't stand to see her disappointed. Ethan shook my hand awkwardly. "We'll pay you back," he'd promised. He never did. A year later, his startup failed. Marissa called late at night, her voice small. "He's trying, Mom. Just a few months until we recover." I wired $10,000 that week, then 5 more, then another 10. Each transfer bought me silence instead of thanks. My friend Miriam once told me, "You raised her to think help just appears. You made it too easy." I'd laughed then, pretending it didn't sting. Maybe I thought being useful would keep me close to her. Now, sitting in the dark, I could still hear Marissa's voice from dinner, bright, careless, so sure she understood what work meant. I'd spent 40 years balancing other people's books and somehow forgot to balance my own life. I reached for my notebook, the one where I kept every record dates, amounts, transfers. I had written them neatly, line by line, like a secret ledger of love. Marissa didn't know any of it. She never asked, and I had never told her. The first time I met Vivian Langford, she wore confidence the way other women wore perfume thick enough to fill the room. She was in her mid-40s then, successful from a string of small real estate ventures that she loved to describe as starting with nothing but grit. When Marissa married Ethan, Vivian handed her a gold pen. "For signing your first property deed," she said. "Every woman should own something in her own name." I'd smiled politely, though the words stung. I had owned a home for 30 years, but no one had ever called that remarkable. Over the years, Marissa absorbed every story Vivian told, the business lunches, the investments, the way she'd never depended on anyone. Sometimes Marissa would repeat them to me, word for word. She built herself up. Mom, no loans, no safety nets. That's strength, I would answer gently. Strength also means knowing when to help someone else. But that never landed. Vivian's version of womanhood glittered louder. One afternoon, I arrived early at Marissa's house with groceries. The door was open, voices carrying from the kitchen. Vivian was there, standing near the island, her manicured hand resting on Marissa's arm. You can't keep letting your mother handle everything, Vivian was saying. It keeps you small. Marissa sighed. She means well. Vivian's smile was smooth. So do most people who hold others back. When they saw me, both went still. Mom, Marissa said too quickly. We were just talking about budgets. I gathered, I replied. I placed the grocery bag on the counter and felt the silence harden. Vivian adjusted her bracelet. Laureen, you raised a wonderful daughter. You must be proud she's so independent. Very, I said evenly. Independence comes easier when someone else pays the bills. For the first time, Vivian didn't smile. Marissa looked down at the floor, cheeks flushed. I finished putting the groceries away without another word. On my drive home, her laughter echoed faintly in my head, the same brittle sound from Sunday dinner. It wasn't just youth or pride anymore. It was inheritance, taught and perfected. 3 days after that afternoon in the kitchen, an envelope arrived in my mailbox, thin, professional, and too neat to be friendly. The return address read Langford Realty Holdings. I opened it at the counter, expecting a brochure. Instead, I found a property transfer form, my property. The small cottage on Pitt Street, one I'd bought 20 years earlier as a rental, was listed beside my name. The line below it already carried 2 typed names, Marissa Calloway Langford and Ethan Langford. Someone had left the signature space for me blank, as if my approval were a given. I called Marissa that evening. Did you send me something from Vivian's company? She hesitated. Oh yeah, it's just paperwork. Vivian's accountant said it'll simplify taxes if the deed's under our name for now. For now, it's just legal structure. Mom, you'll still get credit for it. I own it outright, I said quietly. There's nothing to credit me for. Ethan's voice entered in the background. It's all standard. Laureen, my mom's done this dozens of times. Everyone benefits. I don't recall asking her to manage my property. Marissa's tone softened, the way she used to when asking for money. Vivian's trying to help us build something. You have the stability, she has the experience. It's like sharing. Sharing, I said, because it looks a lot like taking... There was a long pause. Then Marissa exhaled. You're overreacting. Vivian's just smarter about these things. She knows how to make money work for family. I looked at the paper again, the bold lines dividing my name from theirs. Funny, I murmured, because I always thought I was the one doing that. Ethan muttered something I couldn't catch. Marissa's voice rose slightly. Can you just sign it? Please, it's not a big deal. I folded the papers once, twice, until the words disappeared. I'll think about it, I said. When the call ended, I stood at the sink for a long time, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator. In the drawer beside me lay a worn folder marked Mortgages Paid. I slipped the folded deed inside, locked the drawer, and left the kitchen dark. The next morning, I drove to the bank and changed every account connected to my name. At the bank, the clerk recognized me from the years I'd handled payrolls and reconciliations there, still keeping everyone honest. Mrs. Calloway, she joked. Just myself this time. I said, by noon, I had closed 3 accounts, one joint with Marissa, one linked to Ethan's failed business, and one that automatically transferred $2,000 every month to their mortgage. I signed each form with the same calm hand I used for tax returns. Numbers, at least, never lied to me. That evening, I called Miriam, my old colleague from the firm. She'd been retired longer than me, but still sharp as glass. You finally cut the line, she asked after I told her. I think so. I'm not sure what comes next. They'll notice, she said. But only when it hurts. I smiled, though it wasn't a happy one. You sound like you've done this before. I raised 2 sons who thought I was an ATM. They stopped loving me when the screen went blank. Her words sat heavy in my chest, long after we hung up. The next morning, I opened my accounting ledger, the old kind with paper columns, and began listing every amount I'd given Marissa and Ethan. Wedding $60,000. Down payment $120,000. Business rescue $25,000. Spread over 5 transfers. Groceries, loans, emergencies that were really vacations. I filled line after line until the total reached $220,000. I pressed my hand over the page. It was the first time I'd seen my love turned into arithmetic. That night, Marissa called. Mom, the mortgage payment didn't go through. Did the bank make an error? No, I said softly. I stopped it. Silence stretched. Then, sharp and small. Why would you do that? Because I already did enough. She started to argue, but I hung up before the words became cruel. My hand trembled, but my heart didn't. I placed the ledger in my desk drawer beside the folder marked Mortgages Paid. The papers made a soft, certain sound when they touched. Outside, the house was quiet except for the ticking clock. It didn't sound like waiting anymore. It sounded like beginning. It took less than 2 weeks for the silence to break. The first call came from Marissa, her voice tight. Mom, the bank flagged our mortgage payment. Did you forget to approve the transfer? I didn't forget. I said, she exhaled sharply. You stopped it without warning. Ethan's furious. I'm sure he is, I replied. But I've been the only one warning anyone for years. Mom, that's not fair. It's accurate. She hung up before I could say more. 3 days later, Ethan called instead. Laureen, I just want to clear up some confusion. His tone was careful. The way men sound before a negotiation. You must have misunderstood how things were set up. Marissa thought you'd continue helping until we refinanced. I never agreed to that. He paused. Vivian says the transition depends on stability. If she sees payments missing, she'll think we're unreliable. She won't have to think it, I said. She'll see it. For a moment, there was only the hum of the line. Then he said, You're making this personal. It always was. When I hung up, I felt no satisfaction, just a dull steadiness, like the click of a lock that had been waiting years to close. By the end of the month, Marissa stopped calling altogether. But Miriam called. They came by the office, she said. Looking for you. Looking for money. You mean? They looked nervous. Miriam said softly, You were right. They only notice when it hurts. I thanked her and ended the call. That evening, I drove past their house. The lawn was still perfect, but a yellow notice clung to the mailbox utility warning. Second reminder. Through the window, I saw Marissa pacing, phone in hand. Ethan sat at the counter, shoulders tight. A bill spread open in front of him. 2 weeks later, Marissa finally called. Her voice was smaller now. Vivian's been distant. She said we should learn to manage on our own. I thought she'd help. She already did, I said. She taught you who to depend on. Mom, I didn't mean for things to go this way. Neither did I. When the call ended, I stayed sitting in the dark kitchen, my ledger open beside me. Each line still there, each quiet proof of what I'd carried outside. The wind pressed softly against the windows. The sound reminded me of a house learning what emptiness feels like. It was a gray afternoon when I heard the knock, fast, uneven. The way Marissa used to knock as a child when she'd scraped her knee and didn't want to cry. I opened the door. She stood on the porch, pale and furious. You could have ruined us, she said before I could speak. Do you even care what this looks like? The bank called. Vivian called. Everyone thinks we're irresponsible. You are, I said quietly. Sit down. I'm not staying long. But she walked in anyway, eyes darting around my small living room like she'd never seen it before. I don't understand you. After everything we've done to make you proud, I interrupted. What exactly have you done? Her mouth opened, then closed again. You're my mother, she said finally. You're supposed to help me, not humiliate me. I went to my desk and pulled out the thick folder I'd prepared. Help you. I placed it in front of her. I have, for years. She stared at it. What is this proof? I said. Every transfer, every loan, every late-night call that ended with me wiring money I didn't really have. She flipped the folder open. Her hand trembled as she scanned the pages. Wedding, $60,000, she read aloud. Down payment, $120,000. Business rescue, $25,000. Mom, why did you write all this down? Because I was an accountant, I said. Because numbers remember what people forget. Tears gathered in her eyes. I never asked you to keep track. You didn't have to. She closed the folder sharply. You make it sound like I'm some criminal. I make it sound like I'm done, I said. For a moment, she just stared at me, breathing unevenly. You think this makes you strong? You've turned love into a ledger. I looked at her. No, Marissa. You did that when you started measuring mine against someone else's. Her lip trembled, but she didn't look away. Vivian said you'd never understand ambition. I felt something old and heavy shift inside me. Maybe she's right. But I understand debt. And I've paid mine in full. Marissa pressed a hand to her forehead, eyes glistening. I don't know how to fix this. You start by not pretending it wasn't broken. She gathered her purse, leaving the folder on the table. The front door clicked behind her. For a long time, I stayed where I was, staring at the quiet pile of papers, the only part of our history that couldn't be rewritten. Marissa came back 2 days later. No makeup this time. No anger either. Just a stiffness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stood in the doorway, clutching the same folder I'd given her. I showed these to Vivian, she said. I'm sure that was enlightening. Her voice was careful. She said you exaggerated, that you're emotional about money. I almost laughed. Emotional. That's rich. I gestured toward the table. Sit down. Let me tell you something your mother-in-law conveniently forgot. She hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair. I didn't come to argue. Good, I said, pulling out a thin envelope from my desk drawer. Because this isn't an argument. It's history. I slid a single page across the table-aged paper with faded blue ink. That's a bank statement from 1994. The year Vivian applied for her first business loan when Marissa had just graduated from college and Vivian had been building her ventures for a few years already. She didn't qualify on her own, so she asked someone to co-sign. Marissa frowned, scanning the page. Her eyes caught on the signature below Vivian's. Laureen Calloway, she whispered. She came to me when your father was still alive. I said, we believed in her idea. She promised to repay the guarantee after the first property sold. She never did. Instead, she built her empire on that start. Marissa looked up sharply. You helped her. I helped everyone, I said. Even the woman who would later tell my daughter that I'd earned nothing. Marissa's hand trembled against the paper. Does she know you kept this? Oh, she knows, I said. I sent her a copy once on your wedding day. Actually, she thanked me for the floral centerpiece instead. For a long time, Marissa said nothing. The silence stretched between us like something living. Then, softly, all those times she said you didn't understand ambition, she was talking about herself. Ambition isn't the problem, I said. Forgetting where it began is... She closed the folder and pushed it toward me. I don't know what to say. Then don't. Just remember. Marissa nodded slowly, eyes bright. I will. When she left, she didn't slam the door. Through the window, I saw her pause at the curb, phone in hand, uncertain. I knew that call would not be to Vivian. The old loan paper lay between us on the table. Its ink faint but still legible proof that some debts never vanish, even when the world calls them success. Spring arrived early that year. Soft rain washing the salt from the air. By then, months had passed since the afternoon Marissa learned the truth. We didn't talk much at first. Her calls were short, polite. Then one morning, she stopped by with a box of groceries and a faint smile. "You always brought food when I couldn't," she said, setting it on the counter. "Now it's my turn." I nodded. "You don't have to. I know," she said. "That's why I wanted to." We made tea and sat by the window. She told me she'd started working again part-time bookkeeping at a small insurance office. "It's not glamorous," she said, "but it's mine. That's worth more than you think." I told her. She looked down at her hands. Vivian sold her last property. "She's moving to Florida next month. She didn't mention you. I didn't expect her to." Marissa hesitated. I did. Something in her tone, quiet, almost reverent, felt like an apology without the word itself. I let it be enough. That evening, after she left, I walked out to the porch. The garden was starting to bloom again, rosemary, mint, a single rose bush I'd nearly pulled last winter, but couldn't. I replaced the bulb in the porch light, the one that had burned out sometime during all the chaos, and switched it on. The glow spread across the steps, soft and steady. For years, I'd left that light burning whenever Marissa was out late, a signal that someone was waiting, that forgiveness was always within reach. Now it meant something different. It wasn't for waiting anymore. It was for presence, for knowing that, even after the hurt, I still had a life that belonged to me. Inside, the kettle clicked off. I poured myself another cup and watched the light through the screen door, the glow touching the edges of the dark. I thought of Marissa, her quiet strength returning, the way she had finally stopped measuring her worth by anyone else's reflection. The house no longer felt empty. It simply felt mine. Outside, the light stayed on, calm and certain, the way peace sometimes is unannounced, but earned, but